Have you ever read this book? It's about an invasion of Ireland and how the armies of both nations moved to defend it. Indeed, that is a fictional story, but it's worth a read. To come back to real life, something like this isn't far off. We've already seen Europe lose two neutral nations, with one already a member and the other expected to join very soon. Today, I want to focus my attention on another nation with the same status. While Ireland is an EU nation, it has never joined NATO. For decades, it has maintained a policy of neutrality. But given the security changes in both Europe and the rest of the world, a lot of people have wondered what Ireland's policy right now should be. A few years ago, I already made a video criticizing the concept of neutrality itself, but in this video, I want to specifically talk about Ireland. A lot of people take this personally and even get social justice warrior level livid when someone even considers the idea of changing Ireland's military status. They signify their country's neutrality, claiming that no one would invade them because they're pacifists. Many people fail to realize that Ukraine was also a neutral country, and it was invaded. Many people in Ireland realize this as well.
But I do think we need to increase defence spending. We need to pay our military personnel more. We need better equipment. We need to be able to guard our own seas. We need to be able to have radar over our own airspace. And the assumption that we've made for 70 years now is that nobody would attack us because we're a country that's neutral militarily. Ukraine was neutral militarily. It wasn't part of any military alliance. It was attacked because it was politically part of the West, or at least wanted to be politically part of the West.
Others claim that while Sweden and Finland were right to join NATO because of their proximity to Russia, Ireland has no need, as it is on the other side of the continent. This has proven to be false, as only a month before the invasion, Russian naval forces conducted an exercise in Irish waters to the south. This Russian exercise is more alarming than one might think, as it could prove disastrous in a confrontation with Moscow. You see, linking North America and Europe are a large number of undersea cables that support everything from the internet to financial transactions. But they are also very important to the militaries of both continents and to NATO. Four of some of the most important cables, the Amity, the TGN Atlantic, Apollo North, and Yellow AC2, all pass through Irish waters. You can see that Russian naval activity in the area wasn't there by coincidence, as they were clearly practicing severing these cables. Doing so would crash the Irish economy overnight and even cut power to the island in a lot of areas. Any submarines there would also be capable of firing cruise missiles at Ireland, also putting it in danger. Not only that, but there have been several cases of Russia flying its bombers near Irish airspace. A couple of years ago, the Irish Air Corps even attempted to intercept them with their propeller aircraft, and that didn't go so well. I mean, look, it's not surprising. When you try to pin this against this, don't expect good results. I'll get to more about the capabilities of the Irish militaries in a moment. But I just want to notify that Ireland in its current state isn't in a good position to defend itself from naval and aerial attacks. And because of its strategic position, it would be a very attractive candidate for the alliance. These cables are needed for quick communication between the two regions of the Atlantic, and they're more vulnerable than one might think. Because of this, many people in Ireland claim that NATO membership is not necessary, as the alliance would come to their aid anyway. This is not certain. The truth is that Ireland has no mutual defense agreement with any nation. Neither the US nor the UK have any obligation to defend it.
We make the assumption that even if we are attacked, the British and the Americans will come and save us anyway. And I'm not sure that's the kind of assumption a sovereign country like ours should make.
Others will point to the EU, as Article 42 guarantees a mutual defense clause for its member states. There's a catch to that as well. When the treaty was signed in Lisbon, Ireland insisted on a protocol to the agreement that specifically confirmed that the treaty did not affect its policy on neutrality. Many could see this as Dublin having an opt-out to the EU's mutual defense policy and see no need to come to its aid. It is possible that, for a long time, Irish politicians have realized this and have even deployed the Irish Defence Forces on many occasions, pushing neutrality to its limits. In 1981, Dublin made a move against neutrality and refused to embed neutrality itself in the Irish constitution, stating that non-alignment was incompatible with membership of the European community and Irish interests and ideals. As a result, any change in Ireland's military stance would not need a referendum, but only an act passed by Parliament. The Irish Defence Force only needs to acquire assent from the government, the Dáil, and the UN to send more than 12 troops abroad. In the 1990s, Ireland joined NATO's Partnership for Peace, and the Irish Defence Forces were even sent to participate in the war in Afghanistan, mostly with medical and logistics purposes. Ireland even took part in the Kabul airlift at the end of the war. Many people also don't know this, but Ireland joined the NATO Cyber Defence Centre of Excellence, and as of the making of this video, members of the Irish military are stationed in Estonia to contribute Ireland's commitment to the alliance. Let's also not forget that Ireland has completely stood with Ukraine, condemning Russia and even putting sanctions on it. And they're also planning on joining NATO on a certain project to defend undersea cables in the North Atlantic. Yet, the island has stopped short of joining NATO, and many feel that now is the time. The biggest argument against joining the alliance has always been Irish neutrality. To many, neutrality has become a part of the Irish identity, defining the country's place in the world. It has emboldened its role as a UN peacekeeper and mediator. They believe that the country would lose that standing if it were to join an alliance. However, this may not be so. As an example, the biggest neutral mediator to conflict zones all over the world is not Ireland, but it's actually Norway, which is a founding member of NATO, which means that it could still keep that arbitrator position, as in a defensive alliance that takes military action only defensively.
Just find our stance on neutrality. There's something very. I just think it's hypocrisy is at the heart of it. I don't think there's anything virtuous, or I don't think it's a moral stance, our neutrality. I think it's about self-interest or selfish interest, to put it like that. And I'll tell you what, if Putin's Russia was at our doorstep, like it is on the doorstep of Finland or Sweden, we'd be rushing in to NATO. And I do say this, whatever about NATO and joining NATO, I'm unconvinced about the merits of that. I do believe Sean Lemass, he said it 60 years ago, and I think it's still true to this day. If Europe is worth joining, it is worth defending. We're an EU nation. We're happy for them to roll in and bail us out. We're happy for them to be our ally over Brexit, which they did to the absolute limit. But we want nothing to do with defending the EU. I don't think there's anything honourable or noble about that, personally.
Putting neutrality aside, there are other hurdles to joining NATO. According to NATO's article on enlargement, any candidate that wishes to join must not have any disputes with other nations. Throughout much of the 20th century, Ireland and the UK harbored a lot of animosity toward each other because of the status of Northern Ireland, their only land border. Ireland even came up with Operation Armageddon, an incentive to invade Northern Ireland. The dispute wasn't resolved until 1998 with the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. In an alternate universe, if Ireland had ever aspired to join NATO, they wouldn't have been able to do so until 1998 at the earliest. This may seem like a resolved issue, but given the calamities of Brexit, the Irish border is growing rather contentious, and who knows how it will work out in the future. But there is also one other problem to Ireland's membership action plan, and that is Ireland's military. Sweden and Finland are able to join quickly as they have very competent militaries that have been working with NATO for years. When it comes to Ireland, well, my friend here on YouTube, Quixer, has this to say about it.
The Irish Defence Force is a bit of a joke. No offence to the brave sandbags that serve in it. Our country simply just doesn't have the manpower or resources to make up a reliable standing army. Hell, I wouldn't rely on them to defend a pack of biscuits from a group of hungry children. Once again, no offence, sandbags. Just a few months ago, the door fell off an Air Corps helicopter and landed in a Dublin schoolyard below. Sounds funny, but that's actually probably our best aerial offensive manoeuvre.
Yeah, Ireland's military would need to be seriously repackaged for a contribution to any potential alliance. Ireland is the only neutral country in Europe that doesn't have its own domestic arms manufacturer. It is the only nation to use sports planes to fill in the role of fighter jets. I don't know who came up with the idea, but putting rocket pods on a propeller plane and to think that it would go up against modern jets, like seriously, this isn't World War II. They only recently bought 2 transport aircraft for limited airlift capability. The Irish Navy only has a few patrol vessels, and the entire island doesn't have its own long-range radar capability. The Army has it better, but they still have a lot of issues and barely have any anti-aircraft capabilities. The Irish Rangers, which are some of the most well-trained elite forces in the world, are seriously underfunded. Altogether, Ireland spends a mere 0.3% of its GDP on defense. If it were to join NATO in its current form, it would be the lowest defense spender. Many would even question if Ireland would be able to even contribute to NATO at all. But it isn't all bad, as if and when Ireland does increase its defense spending, it wouldn't have to go far to fulfill its obligations. As an island nation, it would only need combat aircraft and anti-ship missiles to mount a good defense of its own territory. The Irish Rangers and other units could be attached to NATO battle groups to respond to any threats to Allied territory. They could also supplement those forces with medical and logistics units, the same way Ireland did in Afghanistan. Also, after acquiring combat aircraft, they could contribute to patrolling the North Atlantic and guarding the vital Guyuk Gap from Russian vessels and aircraft. It would add another layer of defense. Polling on public opinion is relatively mixed and even contradictory. A poll from April 2022 found that 2/3 of the public preferred keeping neutrality, while another poll in September 2022 found that 52% of people supported joining the alliance, the highest that has ever been recorded. Because of the large divide, we might see an uproar from the opposing side, and who knows how that would end, although there is reason to believe that it could calm down, as there were anti-NATO riots in Reykjavik in March 1949 when Iceland joined and they subsided. Perhaps another scene could happen here. But perhaps the biggest obstacle to accession is the government, as currently no major political party in the country has publicly supported joining. We'll just have to see what the future holds, as the parliaments in both Sweden and Finland were at first opposed but now have cross-party support. Time will tell if it will have the same effect in Ireland.